everyone, this is RadTechShoe and I have another Battleborn character review episode for you, and in this video we're going to be looking at Whiskey Foxtrot. We're going to be going over his skill setup, his lore, his backstory, his helix loadout, and tips and tricks that I have found to, try and use this guy as effectively as possible on the battlefield. So without further ado, let's get right into his skill setup. His first skill is called Sticky Bomb. He'll shoot a grenade from his little wrist cannon thing, and it'll land on the ground or stick to an enemy, and after 3 seconds it will detonate. And it deals moderate damage, and it's pretty good. It's a very versatile ability. I like it a lot. His second skill is called Scrap Cannon. He fires a spread of shrapnel from the rifle's underbarrel, and it deals so damage to the opponent, and it wounds them for about 4 seconds. His ultimate ability is called Overdrive. Whiskey Foxtrot will load his tactical rifle with a clip of 75 bullets that are fired fully automatic. Not the greatest ultimate. It sounds like it would be amazing, but I'm really not a huge fan of it. But I do see that it's very effective against larger targets. Now, his passive ability is called Combat Rhythm. After each enemy kill, Whiskey Foxtrot's attack damage is increased by 25% for 10 seconds. That is very strong, that is effective, that is a nice ability. And I wish it would last a little bit longer, like maybe 30 seconds, but I could see people complaining about that. But Combat Rhythm is pretty excellent. His UPR SL3 tactical rifle fires in a deadly 3-round burst, burst fire, not semi-automatic. Doesn't fire one at a time. But it's a 3-round burst. It's relatively efficient, but it does have a little bit of a kick to it. And that's really all there is to Whiskey Foxtrot. He has the Sticky Bomb, the Scrap Cannon, his Overdrive, his Combat Rhythm, and his tactical rifle. And now that we're done with his skills setup, let's go over to his lore and backstory. So the first thing you should know about Whiskey Foxtrot's backstory is that he is a earlier generation of a clone soldier. Similar to what Oscar Mike is, he is a clone. Who the original clone is, I still do not know. I don't know if we'll ever know, or maybe the information has been divulged in an earlier video or a different character, but as far as I can tell, I do not know who the original person that was cloned. But Whiskey Foxtrot was from an earlier clone batch, and they were labeled defective. However, Whiskey Foxtrot himself has managed to avoid being terminated and pretty much, disposed of, and he's a great survivor. He's been in many battles, he's seen a lot of combat from the Rapid Deployment Corps experiment, and he is quite proficient at staying alive, and he's wisened up. He's actually gained a lot of insight and wisdom throughout his life. And it is mentioned that Reyna, the leader of the Rogue faction, was tracking this guy, finding out hey, this guy is, kind of a wild card, but that's how we prefer it in the Rogue faction. Let's get him out to the Dveice ring, and we'll take it from there. So Reyna scouted him out and had him recruited into the Rogue faction, and he's been a member since. However, it is very important to notice that he is just not one of the characters that, he's not your traditional, good guy. Although he is really a good guy at his core. He's just not one of the, he's very rough around the edges, I guess is the best way you could say it. It even goes to one point where he gets, and he has the chance to do the audio log, and the audio log is him sending a direct message to Oscar Mike. He's telling him, look, Mike, I understand you're pretty much a bit of an idiot. You're an idiot clone from an idiot. Whoever the original was, like I said, I still don't know, but Oscar Mike is kind of like a young, gullible, dumb fool. That's part of his character. It's one of the reasons I like him so much. But Whiskey Foxtrot is actually looking out for him. He's saying, look, man, you gotta wise up. Don't just be the blind, obedient, drone. You gotta, keep your mouth shut, keep your head in the game, and keep your eyes on the objective. You've gotta be smart. There's not that many RDC troopers left. We gotta stick together. So Whiskey Foxtrot is actually really deep down a good guy. He just has a different way of showing it. He's very non-traditional in that way. He's more of a tough love kind of guy. And that's one of the reasons why I like his character so much. I'm not a huge fan of playing as him, but I like his character. I like what he represents. He's an older generation. He's pretty much an older version of Oscar Mike with some defects and stuff like that. But he's seen his fair share of battles, and he knows what he's talking about. He is definitely an experienced fighter, and he knows how to handle himself on the battlefield, and he knows how to stay alive. And truth be told, that's really all there is to his character in terms of his lore and backstory. There's not much else to him other than he managed to avoid termination. He was very difficult to kill. You know, the UPR wanted to, you know, terminate his model line, and he is, I believe, the sole survivor of his clone generation. And he's just all about survival now, and he wants to help Oscar Mike survive as well because he knows what ultimately could await him if the UPR decides to get rid of the Oscar Mike series as well. And that's really it for the lore and backstory of Whiskey Foxtrot. So now we're going to move into his Helix loadout, and I'm going to show you the setup that I use with Whiskey Foxtrot to maximize my efficiency on the battlefield. Alright, first up, level 1, I like to go with way down. If an enemy is stuck with a sticky bomb, they are slowed for 3 seconds. This is excellent, and it makes it easier for me to lock onto my opponents once they're slowed down for 3 seconds. It makes it so that they have a harder time getting away, which means they have an increased chance of dying. So that's definitely what I prefer right there for level 1. Next up, level 2, I prefer Swiss cheese. Enemies hit by scrap cannon are revealed, and they take increased damage from Whiskey Foxtrot's tactical rifle. So this is a fun little toy. I've grown to like it a lot. I like comboing this with Reyna's priority target, just making it so that my opponents will take an insane amount of bonus damage for the rough 8 seconds. But for the most part, I prefer Swiss cheese over scrap bank, just because Swiss cheese makes it so that I can quickly hit my opponent with my scrap cannon and then immediately start focusing on them with my tactical rifle. Next up, level 3, I go with red dot sight. Fitting the tactical rifle with red dot sight reduces the movement speed penalty that Whiskey Foxtrot suffers while zoomed in. So, in other words, I move at normal speed while ADSing. This is excellent. This makes it so that I'm harder to hit, especially in a one-on-one battle with another with another shooter. So, if me and an Oscar Mike are going back and forth, this makes it so that I can engage him and not suffer a movement penalty if I were to, as if I were to use scoped up. I do admit scoped up is pretty good, but I just prefer red dot sight for the movement bonus. Next up, level 4, I like to go with triple threat and sticky MIRV. Either one of these is up to you. Whichever one you prefer. Triple threat just fires 3 in rapid succession, 1, 2, 3. Sticky MIRV, the sticky bomb will split into 3 in mid-air, and then it will turn into 3. So, whichever one suits you better, you can definitely go with that. But I prefer triple threat just personally. Next up, level 5. Next up, level 5, I like to go with killer regen. Gaining health regen for a short time after each kill. This is excellent in keeping Whiskey Foxtrot alive, since he has no natural method of life drain or healing or anything like that. This is definitely the best method for him to keep him alive. Anything you kill, any minion, anything, will give him health regeneration. And I've had health regens last for a long time once I killed a small team of ads, these little minion bots and whatnot. Once I wiped out like 4 or 5 of them, I just regened a huge chunk of my health, and it's excellent for keeping Whiskey Foxtrot alive. Next up, level 6, I like to go with napalm. Sticky bomb grenades burn the ground where they detonate. I mean, they leave this little napalm area just like Oscar Mike's grenade. His level 2 augment that covers the area with napalm, Whiskey has the same thing. However, the bonus about this is it also works for when Whiskey Foxtrot's grenades split into 3. So if you cover a wide area with 3 grenades, all 3 of those grenades will cover the area with napalm when they detonate, making it much easier to coat the area with napalm, hitting more enemies, dealing more damage, and just overall, helping you and your team out. So I prefer napalm for level 6. Next up, level 7, I like to go with duct tape mags. Fitting the tactical rifle with 2 tape clips makes it so that every other reload is faster than normal. The increased reload speed means I have less downtime, which means I can keep up the pressure and keep shooting on my opponents. I really don't see anything to not like about that. Next up, level 8, I go with spread shot, increasing spread and density of scrap cannon shots. What this means is I just shoot more scrap at them, that's all it is. However, this doesn't really increase the damage, it just means that I hit my opponents easier. Which means there are more enemies, since I went with my Swiss cheese augment for level 2, now I have more enemies that I have hit, meaning I can deal more bonus damage to any of them for that 8-second Swiss cheese duration. Next up, level 9. Either one of these is up to you. Stronger stickies or swift stickies, either one is perfectly fine. I lean more towards Swift Stickies, just because I like to reduce the Sticky Bomb cooldown timer, making it so that I can use it more and more and more and more. You really can't go wrong with either one of these, so it's up to personal preference. And next up, level 10, I like to go with Overdrive. Increasing Overdrive magazine size to 100 rounds makes it so that I can spit out more bullets and chew through my opponents easier, especially larger enemies like Toby, Isaac, Kelvin, and whatnot, where the extra bonus damage is definitely appreciated. What shields isn't all that great, especially on enemies that don't have shields, like any of the Eldred. So Overdrive is more practical in all circumstances, whereas what shields is a little situational. You won't get that bonus at all if your opponent already doesn't have a shield, because they took damage prior to that. So Overdrive is my go-to perk for level 10. And that's going to do it for this little Helix menu. I've had some fun with Whiskey Foxtrot, and now we're going to go over to the tips and tricks and strategies that I've learned to use this guy effectively on the battlefield. Now I need to be very, very clear on this. I'm not saying I hate him as a character or anything. I'm just not that good playing with him, and I'm not really that fond of playing with him as him. It's not like I think he's trash or anything, but Whiskey Foxtrot just does not do it for me. When I play as Whiskey Foxtrot, I feel like I literally am playing a slightly inferior version of Oscar Mike. Now, I'm not saying you can't have success with him. I'm not saying that he's terrible. Just bear in mind, this is my personal preference. I like Whiskey Foxtrot a little bit less than I like Oscar Mike. He does have his uses, he can be very fun, and he can be effective, but I just prefer Oscar Mike over Whiskey Foxtrot. If I had to pick one or the other, I would choose Oscar Mike in a variety of circumstances. Now that being said, let's go over what it is about him that I do like. I like his Sticky Bomb. The ability to split into 3 projectiles is very excellent. I use that to try and cover choke points and stuff like that, making it so that my opponents can come right on in. And when they do, they get a face full of explosive grenades, covered with napalm all over the floor. Very efficient there. I use the flak with the Swiss cheese perk as much as I can, because I know that I'm not that accurate with him when it comes to his tactical rifle. His tactical rifle kind of sways a little bit. It kicks up and down pretty hard. It's great on the bigger characters like Shane and Oryx, as you can see right there, as well as like Kelvin, Montana, and stuff like that. It just doesn't hit as hard as I would like it, and I'm not that great at landing difficult shots with it. I'm not that great at staying on target. You can definitely run some gear and equipment that'll reduce the recoil. However, I've tried my best I've tried with that, and it just doesn't seem to help all that much. So I try to focus my gear on attack damage, so that each round that does hit does a little bit more damage. I try and focus on damage, sprint speed, movement speed, reload speed especially. Reload speed is excellent for him, because when you have those 2 mags taped together, you can be lightning quick with your reloads so that there's very little downtime. Skill damage can also be pretty useful, and that's really all the recommendations I have for gear. Just basically go with offensive style gear, considering how I believe that Whiskey Foxtrot is more geared towards offense than defense. He's more about trying to push. I just don't like pushing with him all that much. Like I said, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I just prefer Oscar Mike, because I think Oscar Mike can push a little bit better. I think Oscar Mike's skills are slightly superior to Whiskey's in a variety of circumstances. Now, one thing I do like about him is his ultimate. His ultimate is actually very good against the larger enemies, against Kelvin, against Shannon Orox, against Cleese, Atticus, Montana. His ultimate is very good at shaving their health down. You saw me earlier in the video, I believe I melted a Toby with it at range, and that was pretty efficient at doing that. So I prefer to use his ultimate, his overdrive, on large enemies. That way I could just shave off their health real fast. The only problem is I have to make sure that I'm in a safe spot, because once you activate overdrive, you have a limited amount of time to use all the rounds before they go away. So even if you've never fired anything, you can activate it, not shoot a single round, but you'll eventually lose everything and you'll just waste your ultimate. So it's very important to pay attention to that and use it in perfect circumstances where you can maximize the damage, and you could just chew through all the rounds and just, melt an opponent. Like I said, the larger targets are excellent targets for overdrive. When it comes to his, standard, tactical rifle, I just wish it kicked a little bit less, did a little bit more damage. But other than that, Whiskey Foxtrot is a fun character. I strongly recommend that you try and hang out a little bit, in the, about just behind the front lines, like kind of around where, in front of where Ernest would be, or Marquis or Thorn. Hang out around there, but kind of more towards the front, because you want to be able to have the good angles and lines of sight to use your ultimate as well as to use your sticky bombs. Sticky bombs are excellent for coating the area with napalm, especially when they're split into groups of 3. I strongly recommend that you try your best to jump in and out of cover, play smart. When chaos breaks out, like what's going on right here, and enemies and allies are all over the place, Whiskey Foxtrot doesn't seem to fare all that well. He seems to fare well when everything is more controlled. When the enemies are all in one direction in front of you, and you can pick them apart through choke points, and you can control those engagements, especially at range. That's preferably where you want to play Whiskey Foxtrot, is at range. Avoid the melee characters, avoid getting close to them at all costs. He doesn't have much of a defense, from that, unless you use the knockback effect on his scrap cannon. But, I don't use the scrap cannon for knockback effects, so that's just me. But I would definitely recommend that you be very smart with him. Use the high ground like Hira if you can when you're on defense. Play smart, stick with teammates, work on tag teaming opponents, and Whiskey Foxtrot can be effective. I've had games where I've done very well with him, but I just don't do as well with Whiskey as I would with Oscar Mike. I've had amazing success with Oscar Mike, and I know I'm beating the same drum over and over and over, but I just consider Whiskey Foxtrot a toned-down version of Oscar Mike, and that's my overall, opinion of him. I'm sorry if people don't like it, but that's all I've got for this video. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the gameplay and my commentary. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you guys all later. This is RadTech Shoes signing off.